Our story begins with a man named Jin Sowoon, kneeling in the dark, broken and bleeding upon a cold mountain ridge. Before him stands his executioner, white robes catching the moonlight, while Jin clutches the wounds carved deep into his body. He had given everything to the Murim alliance, and this ruin, this slow death, is the only thanks he would ever receive. This is Jin Sowoon, leader of the Murim alliance, the supreme purity divine sword, the very hand that comes now to kill him. Jin remembers every order he obeyed, restoring what they asked, serving without rest, and yet it was never enough. Born with a perfect memory, he was Jin Sowoon, leader of the Sajeng unit, a man who could never forget a single thing. From his flawless mind they rebuilt the Murim alliance's top-secret archives, every lost technique recalled down to the last stroke. And now they tell him he and his memories must be erased from this world, as if his knowledge had become a curse. A blade flashes through the dark, and Jin's body is opened once more by the people he bled for. Jin Sowoon's sword cuts clean through the night air, each strike calm, deliberate, utterly without mercy. Jin staggers back, blood streaming, amazed there is any danger left to fall into after all he has survived. They claimed they would defeat the demonic cult and rebuild a stronghold for the Murim once again. He spits out the truth at last, asking how they could value their precious greater good above human lives used as shields. Watching them, he can no longer tell who is truly the demonic cult and who wears the face of the Murim alliance. To think he entrusted his whole life and his rare ability to such filthy hands, what a bitter, wasted shame. His broken, blood-soaked hand reaches up toward a sky that offers him nothing but his death. Riddled with wounds, Jin collapses, his strength bleeding out into the dirt of the mountain. A lonely grave marker stands beneath the moon, a quiet promise of where this betrayal would leave him. When the war with the demonic cult began, his junior brothers and sisters were dragged in as martial artists of a weak sect. The Tiyul sect was thrown to the front lines, their bodies used as living shields to buy time for the powerful to flee. Jin remembers the war drums and the screams, the moment the slaughter of his sect truly began. Damn it, he curses, all his memory worth nothing while the people he loved were spent like cattle. Why, he asks, did the heavens give him such a useless ability, a perfect memory that could save no one? If they were going to grant him something, why not something actually useful, something strong enough to matter? He gazes at the jade ring left on his bloodied wrist, the last keepsake of all he has failed to protect. He wishes only that he had been strong enough to save his juniors when it counted most. A wooden training sword swings down toward him, and the world shudders strangely around Jin's fading sight. A young, unbroken hand presses against the dirt of a training ground, smooth and whole as it once was. Blood runs from a split lip on a face far younger than the one death had been claiming. Pain explodes through him, raw and real, as though every old wound were being relived at once. Jin lifts his head, eyes wide, staring around at a place that should not exist anymore. It is the Tiyul sect training ground, sunlit and whole, the courtyard where his story first began. Faces he watched die now stand alive before him, breathing, arguing, utterly unaware of what is to come. Jin trembles, his young face flushed and disbelieving, unable to grasp that he has woken in the past. There she is, Hong Sa-yeon, the pink-haired daughter of the sect leader, recoiling and crying out his name in alarm. Another junior brother stares at him, frightened, asking whether something has happened to senior brother Jin. The small, ragged disciples of his weak sect gather close, the very ones the war would one day devour. Jin grips his head, telling them his memory is still too hazy, struggling to separate dream from waking. Then a grin breaks across his young face, fierce and overjoyed to find them all alive again. Soo-yeon folds her arms, scowling and demanding to know what on earth is going on with him. Jin teases her warmly, remembering how cute she was when young and admitting he even misses her nagging. A junior brother weeps with emotion, as Jin speaks of gladly washing their blankets 1,000 times over. But this tender reunion cannot last, for an old enemy is already crossing the training ground toward them. This is Jai Cheol-yong, the young master of the Jai Ryong merchant group, who bought his way into the sect with gold. He is a bully who beat the T-Yul disciples half to death for sport, hiding behind his father's money and power. Once, Jin endured these beatings in silence, swallowing his rage and reaching for the sword he was forced to take up. Jai Cheol-yong sneers, certain this small disciple will cower and bleed like he always has before. But Jin's mind holds the three glories sword and 1,000 techniques learned over a lifetime of war. He remembers it all, every form and counter, and for the first time he is glad to be in this young body. Jin steadies himself, drawing on memory like a weapon, the bully no longer the threat he once was. Jai Cheol-yong lunges, snarling, expecting the same broken disciple he has always tormented. In his mind, Jin pores over the secret manuals, every page of the archives he restored now his to wield. Ghostly figures of countless sword forms ripple through his memory, ready to be made real at last. Power surges through Jin's young frame as the recalled techniques begin to take shape around him. His eye sharpens to a clear, burning focus, the gaze of a veteran trapped in a boy's body. He calls upon the heaven sword technique, the basic form rising into his hands as naturally as breath. His blade cracks across Jai Cheol-yong's skull, and the bully who once ruled them is sent reeling in shock. Jin moves like flowing water now, the lesser heaven sword carrying him in circles around his stunned tormentor. The other disciples gape as the boy they pitied dismantles the bully with effortless, brutal grace. Jai Cheol-yong howls in disbelief that Jin dared strike him with that supposedly trash-tier heaven sword technique. The merchant's son lies sprawled in the dust, his sword fallen, beaten down before the eyes of everyone. Hong Soo-yeon presses a hand to her face, stunned, barely able to form a single word. Jin gazes off at the sky, sorrow softening his fierce eyes as the joy of the fight drains away. He murmurs that he has no more lingering attachments to this world, his voice heavy with old grief. Then memory and reality slam together, and a sharp shock tears a cry from him as his body buckles. Soo-yeon's eyes go wide with fear, shouting at him, frightened by the wild look taking over his mind. A junior brother seizes Jin, asking if he thinks they all just let senior brother Jai beat them like idiots. But Jin's blue eye is already rolling back, his face draining, something inside him beginning to break apart. He turns, swaying, asking whether his sudden return is real and not merely another hazy memory. His strength fails all at once, his body pitching backward as the disciples reach for him in panic. Jin's hand claws at the empty air, his grin twisting into agony as he tumbles toward the ground. Jin lies collapsed and upside down, eyes blown wide with shock, while his terrified juniors scream for him to wake up and a sobbing Hong Soo-yeon cries out his name. He woke in a quiet room lined with old wooden cabinets, the war and the dying still burning behind his eyes. Jin Sowoon lay bandaged on a cot, a single bun in his mouth, alive again in a body far too young. When he opened his eyes, he was in the infirmary, fainted after his junior sister struck him down. So while he rested, he began piecing together every cruel detail of the life he had already lost. The Murim alliance that once stood against the demonic cult had been shattered after losing the war. And the weak T-Yul sect, bound to that alliance, had been left teetering on the edge of annihilation. They had come to him then, knowing his mind could hold more than any vault ever could. Bloodied and broken, Jin Sowoon had offered them the one thing they truly wanted from him. Every book and document in the Murim alliance, he swore to record without missing a single letter. In exchange, he begged only one thing, that his junior brothers and sisters be spared from the battles. They took his memory, they took his loyalty, and then they cut him down like he was nothing. In his final moment, a strange light flared, and the world he knew began to fold in on itself. He returned to the past, dropped back into a body and a courtyard he had not seen in years. He could scarcely believe it, kneeling there, asking himself what in the world was truly happening. Only the jade dragon bracelet on his wrist had crossed back with him, carried from a future already burned away. He remembered all of it, every counterfeit battle he had been forced into against the demonic cult. Outside, an angry voice demanded that bastard Jin Sowoon be dragged out into the open at once. Jin stilled, that voice tugging at memories he had buried, and murmured a low questioning hum. A fat merchant pointed in fury, demanding to see the punk who had struck his son Chiao-yong's head. Hong Sa-yeon bowed low, taking the blame, begging him to speak to her instead of touching Sowoon. The man threatened to cut off the funding that kept the starving Tiyul sect barely standing. The sect leader bowed his back to the merchant, offering a sincere and humiliating apology for it all. Jin's mind dragged him back to fields of corpses, comrades cut down in a war they never deserved. He saw a pale-haired figure standing among the dead, a shadow from the future haunting his thoughts. A second life, he thought bitterly, staring down the long road of suffering he had already walked once. He pictured his own broken body, sprawled and bleeding the way the Alliance had left him to die. Then his fist clenched hard around the bun, crushing it, resolve hardening cold inside his chest. He hurled the bun aside and stepped forward, no longer the helpless boy this era expected him to be. "All right," he said quietly, settling his belt, ready to face the merchant who had come for his blood. Hong Sa-yeon lingered near the gate, watching with worry as the confrontation began to unfold. Jin thanked the man, with thin courtesy, for being so generous as to let the matter slide this once. The merchant, Jai Yonseok of the Jai Ryong merchant group, roared back, "Father of the bully Chiao-yong." He loomed over the kneeling figures, certain that gold and status placed him far above this dying sect. Jin pressed his palms together and bowed his head, every line of him sharpened with cold purpose. He sprang lightly from the wall, drawing every startled eye in the courtyard below toward him. "So you're the little punk who hurt my Chiao-yong," the merchant sneered, grabbing him by the collar. Jin held his calm even as the man's grip tightened, refusing to flinch under the bluster. He noted aloud that there was barely any age difference between them, and the merchant gaped in confusion. Such a fuss, Jin observed, over one boy getting hit on the head during a simple sparring match. The merchant raged that the brat who struck Chiao-yong needed to train in devotion until he entered the academy. Jin asked coolly what about the 10 junior disciples who could not leave their beds after Chiao-yong beat them. The sect leader paled and begged his master to hold back, terrified of what such words might cost them. The merchant snarled that even his group's coin was what kept their pathetic little sect alive at all. Jin only asked, with quiet steel, whether the man truly understood the word responsibility. The merchant laughed that, with a word, he could secure sponsorship from any other sect he pleased. If he did, Jin pressed, would the Tiyul sect not be left worrying about tomorrow's very meals? Yet there was one special privilege, the Murim alliance granted only to its top 108 sects. During the Murim Academy entrance exam, Each of those sects could recommend one disciple for special admission. Jin stood loose and unafraid as the towering merchant glowered down, the courtyard tense around them. But first, Jin said, he was really curious about something that did not quite add up. There was less than a year left, he noted, until the Academy's special admission evaluation arrived. So tell me, he pressed, were you rejected by every other one of those proud sects you boast about? The merchant's face twisted purple with rage, sputtering that this little punk had gone too far. His huge hand seized Jin's head, crushing down, demanding to know if the boy realized who he was. He bellowed that he no longer cared about the lives of the Tiyul sect or their starving disciples. Jin gritted his teeth under the punishing grip, sweat running, but his eyes never lost their edge. Only the Jai Ryong merchant group could save these wretches. The man spat, savoring his power over them. He flung Jin down hard against the cold stone, certain he had crushed the boy's defiance for good. Jin lay sprawled at the merchant's boots, the lesson of the strong over the weak driven into the dirt. The merchant turned his back with a sneer, leaving the broken boy behind without a second glance. Hong Sa-yeon and the others rushed to Jin's side, fear and helpless anger crowding their faces. But Jin's eyes were clear and cold, a man who had already died once and refused to stay weak. Later, alone, he turned the truth over in his mind, calm now where rage had once been. Dawn broke over the distant ridgeline, and with it the shape of a plan only he could see. His task was simple, he told himself, staring into the dark where the future demanded he go. There was just one thing left to do, and that was to become undeniably, ruthlessly stronger. Training internal energy and swordsmanship alone was slow, so there remained only one path forward. Through spiritual elixirs, like the legendary 10,000-year fire ginseng hidden deep in the wilds. The Jianghu Spiritual Elixir Book, one of the Alliance's secrets, lived perfectly intact inside his head. Obtaining the 10,000-year fire ginseng, he resolved, would be the very first step of his rise. He vowed to subjugate the beast that guarded it with a single decisive strike, no hesitation. His energy was weak and his sword weaker, but struggling pointlessly was never his intention at all. Flames erupted as he closed in on the lair, the ginseng's guardian stirring within the heat. A monstrous human-faced spider reared up, jaws gaping, its many eyes fixed hungrily upon the boy. He had read its every weakness in those stolen pages, and now he would turn that knowledge into power. Wreathed in fire, Jin Sowoon lunged into the guardian's nest, the long climb back to strength finally begun. In a memory drenched in poison and rot, the human-faced spider writhed as his blade drove deep into its core. The beast collapsed in the falling snow, its monstrous bulk finally going still on the frozen ground. He stood alone over the corpse, a small figure dwarfed by the carnage he had survived. In that past life his body buckled, a ragged groan tearing loose as the toll of the kill caught up with him. Enough, he had screamed, swallowing the wicked core whole, desperate to grow stronger before the war devoured everyone he loved. Even after consuming that precious thing down to its roots, his internal energy had crawled upward by only a sliver. To think he could absorb so little after eating something so rare, he had raged, the blue light flickering in his palm. It was never enough, and a hand had reached for him in the dark, bloodied and trembling. He had failed, he remembered, screaming that he could not protect the Tiyul sect with the strength he had. And so his juniors had been left broken on cold stone, their future bleeding out into the war that took them all. Hong Sa-yeon fell among them, her body torn apart, another sacrifice in a slaughter he could not stop. Meaningless deaths, every one of them, faces frozen in agony amid the ruin of the orthodox cause. In the Great War between orthodox and demonic, the weak were thrown forward as nothing but meat for the slaughter. To change that fate, he would need real power, and the path began at the Murim Academy he must enter within a year. But at his current rate, he realized with dread that single year would slip through his fingers like ash. Time was falling away from him, each lost moment dripping into the abyss like water from a thawing cliff. He turned his mind to a spiritual elixir, a treasure his perfect memory had never let him forget. Long ago, the merchant Jai Yonsiak had poured a fortune into buying Mount Hua's snow plum pill for his son. But that priceless elixir had vanished without a trace, slipping out of the merchant's vaults like a ghost. The thief was never identified, and since the theft had not happened yet, he still had his chance to seize it first. He walked the present world young again, calm and certain, carrying the weight of a future no one else remembered. Within his mind rose the cold tower of the Murim Alliance, every floor of memory stacked and waiting to be searched. Red threads of recollection cut through the dark like blood, mapping out every secret he had ever filed away. Mission reports, monthly ledgers, the buried records of a lifetime, all of it laid bare before his inner eye. He pulled the old archives close, fingers tracing the bindings of reports only his memory could still recall. He never thought being a walking archive would feel like a gift, yet here every remembered detail was a weapon. In his palm rested a single pale fragment, the spiritual treasure he had finally tracked down in this life. He stood over the fallen human-faced spider once more, but this time the kill had gone exactly as he planned. He swallowed the core, jaw set, gladly helping himself to the power he had paid for in a past he refused to repeat. Then a strange green energy surged up from his arm, alien and wild, and he gasped at what was happening. A torrent of blue and crimson aura erupted around him, raw force colliding inside his veins. The storm of energy swallowed his small frame whole as he absorbed the human-faced spider's poisoned core. Light tore open the darkness of the cave, and the toxin that should have killed him began to break apart. Demonic and orthodox power warred across his body, threatening to rip him asunder from the inside. Yet his face stayed cold and focused, riding the agony as the two forces ground against each other. At his wrist, a green jade ring flared to life, glowing with a power he knew far too well. He laughed in disbelief, the energy roaring around his fist, the impossible suddenly within his grasp. It was the blue dragon bracelet, a relic left behind by the blood-sucking demon, one of the demonic cult's guardian Dharma kings. This bracelet, worn to honor a victory bought with the blood of the fallen, had suddenly awakened on its own. A flood of cleansing aura poured out from it, washing through his arm with terrible, perfect force. The bracelet drank in the wicked energy, purifying the venom that had crippled his old cultivation. It completely detoxified the spider's core, and that purified aura harmonized at last with his T-Yule method. He rose from the storm transformed, the relic glowing softly at his side, his strength finally his own. Under the red lanterns of a festival town, the streets hummed with life he once thought he had lost forever. Their Jai Chiaoyang crowed loudly, boasting of a treasure second only to the purple cloud pill of Mount Hua. He bragged that his father had procured the snow plum pill just for him, flaunting it before an unimpressed Hong Sa-Yon. Hong Sa-Yon, sole daughter of the T-Yule sect leader, watched the merchant's son with open contempt. Yet her thoughts drifted elsewhere, her green eyes shadowed by the memory of a certain reckless senior brother. That day rushed back to her, the day everything between them had quietly begun to change. Jin Sowoon had come barreling toward her then, that big dummy charging through the crowd without a care. He had crashed straight into Jai Chiaoyang, sending the bragging bully tumbling head over heels. Grinning, plate in hand, he had called out to her like nothing in the world could touch them. The little juniors swarmed her, begging her to taste the food, dragging her into a warmth she had forgotten. She softened despite herself, telling them to eat since they had gone a whole day on a single meal. The children froze, suddenly quiet, and asked why she always went silent when she thought of senior brother Jin. Her face flushed crimson as she stammered at them, caught off guard by how easily they had read her heart. One small junior offered up his plate, saying senior brother Jin really loved this meat, saving it for him instead. Hong Sa-yeon's expression melted, the ache of old loss and quiet hope mingling on her face. Then she burst out laughing, scolding and beaming all at once as the juniors crowded around her. The children howled and stuffed their cheeks, the whole table dissolving into a riot of noise and joy. Through the chaos, she wondered aloud where that boy had run off to, leaving these kids behind again. Far from the festival lanterns, the night stretched cold and quiet over distant tiled roofs. Inside the great Jai-ryong merchant group, men laughed and toasted, guarding riches they believed untouchable. Cups clinked among the smug merchants, their secret warehouse heavy with treasures and false security. None of them noticed the shadow already moving past the lanterns, slipping toward the heart of their vault. A figure dropped silently across the rooftops, swift and certain through the darkness. The intruder cut through the night like a blade, bearing down on the merchant group's hidden secret warehouse. A thief crept through the storehouse chuckling to himself, certain his prize was finally within reach. It was the soul chaser, Ju Jangmok, sneering that even Jai Ryong's vault held nothing special. There it sat in its crimson case, the famous snow plum pill of Mount Hua, glowing softly in the dark. The thief snatched the case greedily, laughing at how easily the legendary elixir had fallen into his hands. With this, he gloated, he would gain the energy to master the divine palm of vast heaven's secret manual. But a sudden strike split the night, and the thief's laughter twisted into a cry of pain. A small black figure descended on him out of the dark, fast and merciless, scattering him across the floor. Bloodied fingers closed over the fallen case as a quiet voice cut through the chaos, claiming what it came for. Jin Sowoon lifted the snow plum pill into the moonlight and told the thief he needed it just as much as he did. A pale hand reaches down and lifts a crimson pill, box from a dying man sprawled in his own blood. The white-haired stranger crouches over the corpses, cradling the snow plum pill as if it were always his. Days earlier, the story turns back to a cramped hunting shop hung with stretched pelts and waiting steel. Furs and tanned hides cover the walls of the best supply den in all of Hefei. Behind a half-mask, the young swordsman watches the room with the cold patience of a man who has died once already. He steps inside and tells the shopkeeper he came after hearing this place handles hard-to-find things. The masked youth stands quiet, his black hair tied back, hiding a memory that holds every secret of this era. The shopkeeper grins, calling him an interesting sort of customer. Knife in hand, the bandaged hunter boasts his traps can catch anything from a rabbit to a mountain-sized bear. He drops a heavy pouch of coin and asks for snares meant to bring down tigers and bears. He answers flatly that he is not here to skin anything, so ruined pelts do not concern him. The hunter laughs, picturing traps strong enough to blow the leg clean off a charging beast. Howling with laughter, the shopkeeper imagines exactly what monster this strange buyer means to hunt. 27 years of instinct, the man brags, and not one customer has ever surprised him. Far off, 3 robed killers move through the dark forest, the Mount Kangshan name rotting on their backs. A masked schemer admits that taking the soul chaser will be a hassle, for the man made a name in the Jianghu. One of them grips the stolen snow plum pill box, savoring the treasure already in their hands. A boot settles in the dirt as one bandit sneers that such ruthlessness is just like his senior brother. They scheme that the soul chaser must simply be known as missing, never as murdered. The trio agree the soul-chasing guest will have to vanish quietly for a good long while. Before the killing, one of them suggests they take a look at the precious snow plum pill first. The pill box flares open in their grip, the red treasure glowing like a small captured heart. They gloat that they have 2 months to feed, and only one tiny snow plum pill between them. Then the masked youth drifts into their midst, calm among 3 men who do not yet fear him. He moves first, a low strike folding one robber over with a strangled grunt. The treasure tumbles into his palm as a bandit gasps, asking how he closed the distance so fast. He tells them not to bother explaining. He already knows the lesson they think they are teaching. A robber lunges, snarling that the boy will learn what his life is truly worth. Steel rings as the masked youth turns their attack aside, mocking what Mount Kangshan dared to teach them. One bandit crashes through the brush, thrown down before he can even raise his guard. A fleeing man screams a warning to advance carefully, the words dying in his throat. He murmurs that he has hit the jackpot, the masked face almost amused at his own foreknowledge. Across from him a robber sweats, eyes wide, sensing this is no ordinary boy. Hidden snares snap shut in the leaves, the trap line he bought now closing around his prey. He reminds the stumbling bandit that he did warn him to watch his step. Up close he calls them cowards, sword-wielding warriors who fall back on such cheap tricks. A robber roars back, demanding the masked youth tear off his disguise and show his face. The youth lowers a clenched fist and answers them with a single quiet word, "me." He asks if that is really the answer they wanted to drag out of him. A severed weapon clatters into the grass as he clicks his tongue at how old-fashioned they are. He declares himself the new owner of the snow plum pill, the treasure his by right of memory. He explains he found something strange in the records, all trace of the soul chaser gone after the theft. Every martial artist who whispered of the missing pill had quietly disappeared in that same window. It was almost certain, he reasoned, that the soul chaser had been murdered and buried in silence. He pieced it together, that at least 2 people had split the snow plum pill and swallowed it. A blade flashes upward as the surviving robbers finally understand who hunts them. He names them coldly, 2 of the Mount Kangshan sect's famed 5 swords. A bandit shrieks, asking if he does not fear the great Kangshan sect and the Murim alliance. His eyes narrow above the mask, unmoved by the names that once ruled his old life. He draws the lesser heaven sword, the form rising from memory as if he had never lost it. A robber's whip lashes out, but the youth reads its arc before it even uncoils. Damn the traps, a bandit curses, realizing every patch of leaves around them is rigged. He braces to strike, telling them to prepare themselves as he closes the last distance. A robber warns his brother that the youth is herding them toward yet another field of traps. A bandit laughs that the boy's flimsy tricks are useless, even as the noose tightens around him. Grinning through blood, a robber tells the youth his life will end right here. A single calm eye fixes the bandits, certain of how this all ends because he has seen it. A robber crumples with a scream, choking out a broken cry of how did this happen? He admits they were smarter than he expected, but it never changed the ending. A bleeding bandit gasps that he laid the traps this densely from the very start. He says it is because of his memory, the one gift the heavens ever bothered to give him. His sword falls one final time, the only blessing his second life carries. Blood paints the air as the last of the Kangshan, 5 swords drops to the forest floor. The scene shifts to the quiet roofs of the Tiyul sect, his old home still standing in Hefei. Far away, an old hand lifts a cup of tea, a soft hum hiding sharper questions beneath. The Murim Alliance chief strategist Jin Sowoon sits across from his guest, all courtesy and edges. Alliance elder Namgung T1 asks why so many powerful sects have suddenly risen in Hefei. Talk turns to the Cheolgeom sect, and the rumors quietly circling within the alliance itself. It seems Namgung T1 has been backing the Cheolgeom sect, and the whispers prove true. He warns that the sects of the 108 peaks are never replaced unless they commit some grave sin. The truth, the elder murmurs, is that the Tiyul sect has been abusing its standing for years. He asks plainly whether the Tiyul sect is exploiting the privileges of the 108 peaks. A cruel smile spreads, the shadow of a war already gathering over Jin Sowoon's people. An old elder of the Murim Alliance settles in across the table, speaking of how the Tiyul sect enjoys the privileges of the 108 peaks. His grin stretches too wide, a greedy hunger barely hidden behind the courtesy of a powerful man. Beyond the pavilion, the mountains stand silent, ancient peaks that once meant honor and now mean only leverage. Jin Sowoon sits quietly, young again, listening as the past he remembers all too well comes circling back. The elder spreads his hands, insisting he never came to squeeze some other sect out of its place among the 108 peaks. But Sowoon's narrowed eye reads the lie cleanly, every word the man speaks already written in memory. The elder pours tea and recalls why the alliance ever granted those privileges, to honor those who fought in the darkest days. The amber tea spills into the cup as he laments watching all those old meanings quietly fade away. As a member of the Murim Alliance, he says, it truly breaks his heart to see such glory forgotten. Night falls over the sect grounds, the kind of cold dark where old grudges sharpen into knives. Alone in seclusion, Sowoon sits bare-backed as blue Kai roars up his spine in coiling spirals of light. Sweat pours down his clenched face as the energy tears through every meridian, refining flesh into something stronger. His blue eye blazes open, the power surging far past anything his old body ever held. He kneels at the storm's center, Kai spiraling around him like a living thing answering his will. His fist tightens, and he reflects that the famed snow plum pill has done its work after half a cycle of training. With a fierce grin, he realizes he has finally surpassed the internal energy of his entire past life. Footsteps thud across the wooden floor as someone hurries toward the room he has not left in days. Sowoon steps out at last, and a startled servant scrambles up from the floor calling out, "Excuse me." The boy stares up in shock, gasping that the young master has finally come out of seclusion. Sowoon tells him a lot of things did happen, then orders him simply to bring anything to eat. The servant frets that the kitchen has long since closed at this late hour, but Sowoon promises to reward him well. Coins fly as the boy bolts to wake the lazy chef, and Sowoon smirks that nothing in this world money cannot buy. He thinks how fortunate it was to use the blue dragon bracelet to secure himself some funds in advance. In memory, the bracelet flares against the snarling skull of a demonic beast, drinking its life dry. The cursed relic blooms with cold blue Kai, a hunger that does not stop at monsters alone. It could draw vital energy from any living creature, even a great tiger left dead in the forest dark. Later he hauls rolled tiger skins to a stunned trader, cheerfully announcing he is here to sell them. Finding ways to make money is all well and good, he muses, but the real problem runs far deeper. The bracelet's power could too easily be mistaken for the demonic cult, which makes it a dangerous thing to wield. One of the 10 forbidden arts is the heaven-devouring art, and his bracelet looks exactly like it. He clenches his fist, knowing that if the Alliance ever catches him, he will not be the only one to pay. At last, a servant arrives carrying a tray, announcing brightly that the young master's food has finally come. Steaming dishes crowd the table, and his eyes light up at the feast laid out before him. He devours the meal in famished gulps as the curious servants linger, wondering why he will not leave. One asks if he has heard the latest rumors, and Sowoon glances up between mouthfuls, asking what rumors. They whisper that the Jai Ryong merchant group held a grand banquet after obtaining a precious spiritual elixir. But something went wrong in the middle of the feast, and his face stiffens at the words. To steal a spiritual elixir without a trace in such a crowd, they marvel. The thief must be terribly skilled. Sowoon nearly chokes on his food, then waves it off, telling them no, he is fine, so keep talking. The Alliance sent an investigation team to hunt the culprit, and he presses. Did they find any evidence? His mind races behind a forced calm, calculating how close their hunters might already be to him. The owner must be devastated, the servant sighs, since the ruined banquet cost them so many customers. But thankfully, another banquet is coming in Hefei, and Sowoon's eyes sharpen at the mention of the merchant group. They chatter of a 7-day feast for the Iron Sword sect leader's 60th birthday, their busiest peak season. Sowoon lowers his head with a dark smile, certain that the timing is exactly as he remembers it. And memory drags him down into blood, a body crumpling lifeless in a falling rain of red and grief. He screams in the crimson dark, cradling his dying father, and confesses it was all his fault, Jin Sowoon, the son. Wrenched back to the present, he stands alone in the night, the old wound still burning behind his eyes. A servant calls out thanks for the meal. The ordinary sound a thin shield against the danger gathering near. Then dark boots strike the ground, and a servant turns, uncertain, calling toward the shadows, young master. A silhouette charges through a blaze of light, sprinting straight for him with lethal intent. A red-haired assassin crashes down, blade flashing, as Sowoon throws himself flat across the cold stone. A few days earlier, at the Tiyul sect, the disciples toiled through brutal sword training beneath a merciless sky. They collapsed onto the cold stone steps, legs trembling, breath ragged from 100 punishing downward strikes. The Jiamyundong brothers gulped water and gasped, half dead, wondering if any of this agony made them stronger. They squabbled over whether anyone had ever called senior brother Jin cool after he beat senior brother Jai. Then a quieter worry surfaced. What was senior brother Jin even doing now, gone for over a week? It was the first time he had ever vanished without a word, leaving them uneasy in his shadow. They feared he had left to spare the sect from the Jai Ryong merchant group's revenge. They spoke of Jin as if he were already dead, calling him annoying yet truly a good person. Far off, a lone figure walked back through the great Tiyul gate, the past pulling him forward again. Jin Sowoon vowed that if he refused the Iron Sword sect this time, his father would be forced to grovel. That humiliation was only one of countless insults the whole Tiyul sect had been made to swallow. He told himself not to overcomplicate things, resolving that none of them would attend that banquet. The juniors spotted him at last and rushed over, demanding to know where on earth he had been. They swarmed him, begging him to teach the move he used to beat senior brother Jai. Jin laughed and ruffled their heads, asking if they had stayed well and obeyed the hall leaders. Senior brother Jai stormed up, screaming Jin Sowoon's name, hungry for the rematch he was owed. Then a sterner voice cut through the noise, as his father demanded where he had been wandering. Jin shocked everyone by embracing his father, savoring a tenderness his first cruel life had never allowed. Senior brother Jai reeled, barely believing that bastard Jin Sowoon had finally returned to face him. Jai demanded a true duel, accusing Jin of winning last time with nothing but a cheap trick. Jin only grinned in the shadows, a cruel knowing edge to his smile that promised humiliation. Jin gushed that the snow plum pill had made Jai's expert aura blinding, far too strong to ever challenge. Hong Sa-yeon hissed that Jin was provoking him, since everyone knew the snow plum pill had been stolen. Jin smirked and admitted that was exactly why he brought it up, watching Jai flee in shame. Then Jin unveiled a feast of expensive sweets and taffy he had brought back for the juniors. The children cheered while his father bellowed that a fool with money should have bought rice, not snacks. Hong Sa-yeon softened, murmuring that even out wandering, this dummy had thought only of the Tiyul sect. She explained the merchant group was too busy now to harass them, so he need not carry it all alone. With fierce eyes, she ordered him never to vanish without warning like that ever again. Jin blinked, oddly touched, calling her junior sister as her rare kindness caught him off guard. Then she let slip that the Tiyul sect was attending the Iron Sword sect's banquet after all. It was already decided. Refusing without reason would brand them as rude before all the clans. Jin cursed inwardly, realizing he still needed some clever excuse to keep them away from that pit. His father pushed past, declaring that he alone would go to the Iron Sword sect while the rest stayed behind. Then the youngest, Lee Dongryong, shyly held out precious rice cakes saved from the merchant banquet. Jin froze, recognizing the famed rice cakes the boy could so easily have devoured himself. Dongryong confessed he held back and saved them just to share the rare delicacy with Jin. The boy had kept them untouched all this time, admitting another day, and he could not have resisted. Moved, Jin grinned and crammed the whole bundle into his mouth in a single shameless bite. Dongryong wailed that half of those rice cakes had been his, watching them vanish in horror. Laughing, Jin handed over all of his expensive sweets to the stunned, delighted child in trade. The other juniors mobbed Dongryong for the treats, while Jin turned thoughtfully toward Hong Sa-yeon. He understood now that skipping this banquet would only invite endless future invitations and slights. They would endure insults 100 times over, and so would those innocent children forever. So Jin made his choice, declaring with a fierce grin that they would all go to the Iron Sword sect. On the day of the sect leader's 60th birthday, the Tiyul procession set out along the road. Beneath the towering Iron Sword sect gate, the warning came that there was one rule Jin must obey. Hall leader Kang Ki-seok ordered him never to act rashly under any circumstances. Jin teased that the order was aimed squarely at him, asking if Kang had only come to babysit. Kang fumed that he was already out of line, demanding why he had suddenly chosen to come along. Jin needled the hall leader, claiming Kang's nagging had grown identical to his father's over the years. His father sensed something different, watching Jin stay strangely quiet as they neared the Iron Sword sect. Jin promised to grin and bear every insult to their sect and ancestors, then took a smack for his cheek. At last the procession reached the threshold of the Iron Sword sect grounds. A sneering group blocked the way, demanding the Tiyul members step aside so they could cut ahead. They claimed a companion held their spot, insisting the whole crowd deserved to skip the line. When the disciples protested, a thug seized one by the collar, snarling at his shameless nerve. Jin Sowoon stepped in, calmly silencing the bully and offering to explain the matter himself. Their leader laughed and announced himself as Gu Yongsa of the mighty Qingjuk fortress. The disciples paled at the name, and Gu warned them to yield rather than start needless trouble. The terrified merchant leader bowed at once, calling Qingjuk the most prestigious sect in Nanjing. But the name stirred something cold in Jin, a memory of betrayal still to come. He recalled that Gu Yongsa, the fortress master's son, would one day become a scumbag ally of Jai Qiaoyang. Gu gloated over the frozen merchant and the shabby sect, until something about their uniforms gave him pause. His ally recognized them as the Tiyul sect of the 108 Peaks, scoffing at how they ever earned that rank. Jin Sowoon smoldered, knowing their seat could be stolen out from under them by the Iron Sword sect. Then Jin spoke up, feigning ignorance and asking Gu to repeat the name of his precious fortress. He deliberately mangled it, sneering that he had never once heard of any such sect before. Gu's face went white with disbelief at the open insult to his proud bloodline. Jin pressed the wound, wondering aloud with a grin whether he had heard the name down in the outhouse. Gu's men lunged in fury, but Jin Sowoon moved like a shadow to intercept the attack. He clamped down on a flashing blade, halting their assault with terrifying, effortless strength. Gu Yongsa shrieked that this bastard dared to insult the Cheongjuk fortress to its very face. As steel rang out, a new presence approached, demanding to know the cause of all the commotion. An Iron Sword sect swordsman leveled his glittering blade, ready to spill blood at the gate. The crowd gasped, recognizing the Iron Sword sect's famed beautiful wolf, lovelier than every rumor. She stepped forward and asked, cold and calm, if they had truly come to honor her grandfather's banquet. Siang Morin fixed them with a wolf stare, asking instead if they had come hoping to see blood spilled. The Iron Sword sect rose from nothing only 150 years ago, yet it already cast a long shadow over Hefei. They held no grudge against the Taiyi sect, but two great powers could not share the same city in peace. Hungry for glory, they meant to tear the Taiyi sect's place among the 108 Peaks away. In my first life, before death dragged me back, the Taiyi sect attended this very 60th birthday banquet. I remembered every cruelty of that night, and I swore this time the ending would not be the same. A commotion erupted before we ever stepped inside, the crowd already buzzing with alarm and confusion. A figure carved through the chaos, blade flashing, demanding whether we had come to her grandfather's banquet hoping for bloodshed. Onlookers gasped her name in awe, calling her the beautiful wolf Iron Sword of the rising sect. It turned out a lowly servant had insulted us, ordering us to the back of the line like beggars. She introduced herself with grace as Siang Morin of the Iron Sword sect, and apologized for the disgrace. Calling it a small compensation, she offered to escort the Taiyi sect and the Jai Ryong merchants inside herself. So our procession marched down the long stone path, banners snapping, the towering gate looming ahead. A grinning merchant leaned in to flatter her, swearing the rumors of her beauty fell far short of the truth. Siang Morin accepted the praise coolly and urged us onward, saying the young sect leader awaited us. I studied her closely, for in my first life this woman had never once crossed paths with the Taiyi sect. Had my own meddling already twisted the threads of fate, or did she hide some deeper motive of her own? Such generosity was never given freely, and I knew there had to be a reason buried beneath the kindness. Inside the grand banquet hall, drunken laughter thundered down the aisle as the feast roared on. Upon the dais sat the white-maned sect leader Siang Chenwal, and beside him his scheming heir, Siang Jutak. The young sect leader greeted the elders warmly, lamenting how long it had been since their last meeting. With a booming voice, he embraced the Jai Ryong merchant leader, brushing aside all stiff formality between old friends. Then he turned his gaze on our hall leader, his smile sharpening into something hungry and false. He raised his cup, boasting he could not sleep for envy of the talent he once let slip through his fingers. Were it not for the privileges of the 108 Peaks, he sneered, He would have claimed Qiao Yang as his disciple. He grinned wide, savoring his own poison while pretending it was nothing more than warm flattery. The hall leaders bowed and gave their names: Jin Tison of the External Hall and Kang Ki-siak of the Swift Hall. Seong Ju-tak peered down at them, murmuring whether it had truly been 20 years since that incident. He gestured toward the women and the children of the elders, asking idly who belonged to whom. His voice dripped with mockery as he eyed Hong Sa-yeon and me, the supposed prospects of the Taeyi sect. He clicked his tongue, calling our comprehension underwhelming, doubting we could be anyone's finest hopes. It was only natural, he scoffed, that nothing worthwhile could ever grow within the walls of the Taeyi sect. He warned the elders not to waste their strength on us, but to pour everything into pushing Qiao Yang alone. And he begged them, with mock concern, never to teach the boy the Taeyi sect's worthless martial arts. For he would hate, he laughed, to see such a promising child reduced to a third-rate martial artist. His grin twisted into open contempt as he spat that final insult down upon all of us. He was no back-alley thug, he claimed, yet every word from his mouth was crafted only to wound. I could no longer hold my tongue, and the words slipped free that everything he said was unbearably annoying. His face went slack with disbelief, his cup trembling as he demanded to know what I had just dared to say. I bowed with mock sincerity, apologizing that I had only meant to think it, not let it slip aloud. I pressed on, listing how he had insulted our sect, our elders, and our arts as though we were beneath him. Even the sages, I said, taught that one should never answer rudeness with rudeness, so I offered my apology. The old sect leader's face contorted with fury, the veins straining as he glared down from his seat. Seong Ju-tak shook with rage, his teeth bared, sputtering that I was nothing but an insolent bastard. I held his stare without flinching, asking calmly whether he truly would not accept my apology. His grip crushed the cup as he lunged upward, shrieking that I was an ill-mannered brat who would pay. But before his blow could land, a herald cried that the Murim Alliance's chief strategist had finally arrived. In an instant the hall forgot us entirely, every guest scrambling to rush out and pay their respects. Seong Ju-tak swallowed his rage with a furious snort, robbed of his vengeance by the strategist's timing. Sa-yeon fretted that we should hurry too, but I told her hundreds would crowd to flatter the man anyway. As the elders dragged me aside, the hall leader hissed my name, calling me reckless for what I had done. He shook me by the collar, demanding why I would speak so to the heir of the powerful Iron Sword sect. I answered plainly that had I not stepped in, he himself would have drawn his blade in blind fury. Seong Ju-tak had been baiting us all along, hoping someone would draw steel and give him cause for slaughter. The elder warned me to behave, for the Iron Sword sect was openly trying to provoke us into ruin. He fell silent then, knowing my reckless words had spared us a far deadlier mistake than he first feared. Seong Morin appeared once more, radiant and smiling, offering to lead us somewhere we could speak in peace. The elders stammered their thanks, hurrying after her toward the fine seats she had so generously promised. She brought us to a pavilion overlooking a wide and tranquil pond, a place fit for the most honored guests. The table groaned beneath delicacies we could scarcely dream of, dishes far above our humble station. It baffled my companions why the Iron Sword sect would lavish such treatment on us at the very front of the feast. Morin excused her absence from the strategist's reception, noting her sect barred women from such weighty affairs. My thoughts turned to the blood wolf Iron Sword, Seong Mo-hyun, raised on every resource the sect could hoard. He was the chosen heir, the one fated to one day inherit the Iron Sword sect's full and terrible might. Yet Morin herself, though she began cultivating at the late age of 9, was a genius bound for the Murim Academy. She teased me about her rumored sharp teeth, and I countered that her favor might one day serve the Taeyi sect well. The old merchant laughed off her kindness, half joking that she might as well take Chiao-young for herself. I lowered the food from my lips and told her there was one thing about her that truly puzzled me. With what intention, I asked, had the Iron Sword sect ever invited the Taeyi sect to this banquet at all? She only smiled wider, my pointed question seeming to delight her rather than unsettle her at all. A banquet is most meaningful when many gather, she purred, and I reminded her history's deadliest murders happened at feasts. For a single heartbeat her eyes glinted, the playful mask thinning to reveal something colder beneath. Then she laughed it away, declaring me a truly interesting young warrior before rising to take her leave. She bowed her farewell and slipped from the pavilion, leaving the elders bewildered in her wake. Her departing footsteps echoed away, and the old merchant could only stare after her in stunned silence. Alone upon the rooftop beneath the moon, Siang Morin sighed that not one decent warrior stood among the guests. Yet she admitted the young master Jin Sowoon of the Taeyi sect had proven strangely interesting to her. Below her, men crowded close, suitors begging the beautiful wolf to grace their banquets with her presence. They jostled and pleaded, each insisting she join him for the night's gathering, blind to her cold contempt. From her perch she breathed easier, marveling that none of them was even half the warrior she longed to find. My internal power had seemed negligible, she mused, yet I never bowed my head before her father or grandfather. She wondered aloud whether I simply did not fear the Iron Sword sect, or whether I was merely insane. The suitors still clamored below, quarreling over which banquet the famed beauty would deign to attend. They asked after the Taeyi girl and Chiao-young, puzzled by where the strange pair had wandered off to. Morin lay back upon the tiles, her thoughts circling endlessly around the fearless boy from the Taeyi sect. Then a knock fell upon her door in the dead of night, and she smiled, asking what brought her visitor so late. A fist hangs frozen at the door, and a wary voice asks who dares come knocking at this late hour. Jin Sowoon turns, eyes narrowing, every instinct from his stolen second life screaming caution. Hong Sot-yeon stands in the lamplight, her pink hair loose, wondering aloud what brings her here so late. She tells him gently that it would be good if young Master Jin joined them at the banquet. He declines, voice flat, knowing the long day has left the Taeyul disciples drained to the bone. His junior sister lingers at the threshold, beginning a quiet plea she cannot quite finish. Jin's shadowed gaze hardens as memory and warning collide behind his calm face. His thoughts drift back to the brewing trap waiting inside the Iron Sword sect's halls. He recalls why he tried so hard to avoid attending this dangerous gathering at all. He cannot leave Sot-yeon alone in a place where the Iron Sword sect may already have laid a snare. Two pairs of feet face off across the floor, the tension already drawn tight as a blade. He studies her sharp eyes, weighing whether the woman before him is enemy or ally. She probes him, hinting his composure masks either acting or a martial skill far beyond his rank. Jin's breath catches as he wonders if she truly cannot see what her own people are scheming. A leaf drifts on the cold wind as doubt settles heavy between the two of them. Hong Sot-yeon's face twists with hurt and anger, stung by the bitter words exchanged. A wide, cruel grin splits the dark, the hidden watcher savoring the discord he helped to sow. At this banquet, her own brother Siang Mo-hyun means to crush the Taeyul sect underfoot. Even if Jin steps back now, the trap is already closing tight around them. She bristles, refusing the suggestion that she is some lunatic crying persecution where none exists. Alone in the dark she stands rigid, the weight of suspicion pressing down on her shoulders. Across the still water the banquet hall glows, a golden mouth waiting to swallow them whole. Servants and guests stream into the great hall as the fateful night finally begins. A grinning elder raises his cup, praising the Iron Sword sect as a paragon among orthodox sects. He sneers about a tragic admission, mocking the special circumstances that brought Jin to the peak. Laughing men lean close, jeering that the woman does not refuse to answer, she simply cannot. Hong Sa-yeon flinches, voice breaking as she insists nothing she said was ever wrong. A hand tilts an empty cup, and a cold voice announces that now the real game begins. Water swirls in the cup, as Jin senses the room turning against them like a closing net. A man grins wide, asking with false sweetness whether the Tiyul sect agrees for the greater good. Sa-yeon stammers, cornered, her wide eyes searching for any way out of the trap. A disciple folds under the pressure, reluctantly agreeing with the opinion forced upon him. Sa-yeon lowers her gaze, recalling the bitter exchange from earlier that very afternoon. A servant bows and invites a guest to sit, the courtesy thin over the venom beneath. He apologizes that he is only here to guide a guest and will be leaving soon enough. Jin moves low through the hall, calmly asking to set up another drinking table nearby. A man snarls, demanding to know if Jin cannot hear his senior brother speaking to him. The bully bristles, scoffing that this nobody dares call himself anyone's senior brother. Sa-yeon spins toward Jin, alarmed, demanding to know why he came here at all. Jin feigns innocence, tilting his head and asking when he ever caused any incident. His sharp eye sweeps the room, while everyone is busy heaping scorn on the Tiyul sect. He marks two guests who have not once glanced their way, sensing the true players in this hall. His gaze fixes on Namgongsan, the awakened divine dragon sipping calmly amid the chaos. Beside him lounges the red-haired blood wolf, Seong Mo-hyun, cup raised in lazy menace. The blood wolf's eye glints, a predator amused by the prey wandering into his den. Jin reaches the head of the hall to face the true host of this poisoned banquet. He greets them coolly, confirming that Jin Sowoon now leads the Tiyul sect. The grinning host swirls his cup, baiting Jin into the confrontation he has been preparing. Jin meets the challenge head-on, unflinching, his calm a wall against their mockery. A hand snatches a skewer of meat, as Jin coolly reminds them he already said they agree. The host snarls about a pond staying clear only when fresh water keeps flowing into it. Jin bites into the food, unbothered, twisting their own proverb back against them with a smirk. He gestures lazily, raising the example of the Cheongjuk fortress to drive his point home. He needles them about who truly holds the position of fortress master, beneath the polite talk. An elder's face darkens, his patience fraying as Jin's words cut ever closer to the bone. A blade gleams on dark cloth, a silent promise that words will soon give way to steel. Wine is poured into a cup as Jin grants that the sect is indeed excellent and strong. But he was told to entrust his back to brothers who draw their swords on one another. A hand seizes a fistful of robe, the tension snapping into open hostility at last. Jin only smiles, arms loose, daring the furious men to make their move. Onlookers gape and squirm, sensing the night has slipped beyond anyone's control. An enraged elder grabs his collar, spitting that taking such a sect as a blood ally is unbearable. The grip tightens to a chokehold, knuckles white with fury against Jin's throat. Jin twists free in a blur, turning the assault back on the man who started it. Bodies scatter across the hall as the confrontation erupts into open violence. An elder cries that such disrespect to an invited guest shames the entire Iron Sword sect. A pale-eyed man tilts his head, voice silken, asking how they could let this insult stand. Murim steps forward, the genius heiress commanding Cheng-juk to not interfere. Jin lowers his head, offering to shoulder the blame so the discussion need not be ruined. Seo-yeon's eyes go wide with dread, knowing once tempers break here there is no turning back. A heavy hand clamps his shoulder, as a voice declares the enjoyable banquet has been ruined. Jin clasps his hands and bows, the picture of humility masking the storm beneath. Murim startles, taken aback that he would so readily lower himself before them. He apologizes to young Master Gu as well, calling himself rash for raising sect affairs. A cold eye watches from the side, wholly unmoved by the show of contrition. A servant brightens with relief, eager to believe the trouble has finally passed. A figure crumpled in shadow rasps out a single word, telling everyone to wait. A grim voice asks what would become of their face if they let Jin leave unscathed. He names himself a disciple of the Iron Sword sect, and the sect leader's own grandson. Eyes blazing red in the dark, Mo-hyun declares a mere apology will never suffice. The blood wolf rises laughing, hand outstretched, hungry for the violence he has craved all night. His cackling face fills the dark, the grinning shadow finally stepping into the open. Jin stands alone amid the swirling tension, calm and unbroken as the threat closes in. The watcher grins down at Seo-yeon, gloating that he was right about Jin Sowoon after all. Mo-hyun throws his head back and laughs, the blood wolf savoring the cruelty he is about to unleash. He sneers down at the sparring ground, certain that he was right about the weakling sect all along. Back at the sect, Jin Sowoon's father scolds him, demanding to know how the boy plans to handle the aftermath. Hong Seo-yeon, his pink-haired junior sister, snaps that he never should have gone to that banquet at all. She argues he still should have held back instead of striking the air during the sparring match. Sowoon stays calm, reminding them that if he had not gone, Mo-hyun would have challenged Seo-yeon herself. Seo-yeon flushes red and looks away, unable to argue against the reason he stepped in to shield her. Sowoon grins and waves it off, telling them not to cry because he already has a plan in motion. His father erupts, roaring that the boy is making his junior sister weep with such reckless talk. The old man leans in hard, growling at Jin Sowoon to finally do something about his arrogant son. Sowoon meets his father's fury without flinching, asking only that they trust him just this once. His father stares at the strange resolve in the boy he thought he knew, unsettled by the change in him. Sowoon's eye burns with quiet certainty, the memory of 2 lifetimes hidden behind that steady gaze. Jin Sowoon's weathered face hardens, as he weighs whether to gamble everything on his son's word. Dawn breaks over the towering halls of the sect, the calm before the storm Sowoon has set in motion. Sowoon rushes through the corridors as Seo-yeon calls after him, asking why he is in such a hurry. Word spreads that the external hall leader has been summoned, and dread settles over the disciples. Sowoon's eyes go wide and cold as the weight of what is unfolding crashes down on him. A body tumbles to the ground, the first sign that the Iron Sword sect has already begun its humiliation. Today, the day of the sparring match at the Iron Sword sect, the very thing he feared has come to pass. A jeering crowd swells, mocking that the Tae sect dared to insult the mighty Iron Sword sect. At the center kneels Jin Sowoon, his head bowed low before the assembled masters in shame. Seong Chinwal, leader of the Iron Sword sect, looms above with his long white beard and merciless eyes. He waves a hand and tells someone not to mind him, to simply go on with the cruel business at hand. Beside him stands the Murim Alliance's chief strategist, Jin Sowoon, watching with cold interest. The Iron Sword sect, they murmur. is determined to push the Taeyi sect off the 108 peaks at any cost. Jin Sowoon presses his forehead to the stone and begs forgiveness for a sin he never truly committed. Chinwal smirks, demanding they all hear the supposed sin worthy of death that his son has done. Blood spatters the pale flagstones as the kneeling man is struck again for daring to defend his child. Sowoon arrives and screams across the courtyard, demanding to know what they are doing to his father. From the distance, he sees the broken figure bowing on the steps, surrounded by gloating enemies. Sowoon strides forward and tells his father to stay still, his voice low and dangerous. He asks what father in this world could just stand by and watch his son be hurt so unjustly. His face darkens with grief and rage, forced to watch the man he loves made to look so pathetic. His fist clenches white-knuckled, trembling with the fury he has carried across 2 lifetimes. From above, Mohyun mocks that the old man slamming his head on the ground nearly brings him to tears. The blood wolf grins wide and cruel, ordering Sowoon to kneel down beside his father right now. A blade is offered low, a final insult demanding the boy crawl and beg as his broken father did. Jin Sowoon rasps that his sword is already broken, pleading for his son not to throw his life away. Sowoon places a hand on his father's bloodied shoulder, telling him these threats hold no meaning. He says he simply wants to show them all something, his calm more terrifying than any rage. His father and Saryeon stare in dread, sensing the boy is about to defy the entire Iron Sword sect. Jin Sowoon calls him a foolish child, reaching out in vain to stop him from this suicidal stand. Sowoon turns with quiet steel in his eyes and tells his father to just watch what comes next. He raises a borrowed blade with 2 fingers, testing its weight as the crowd falls silent. Mohyun strides into the ring, sneering that he will see what the worthless boy has got. They recall how Mohyun grew up devouring all of the sect's resources to become a prodigy. He carries the famed sword of the Iron Sword sect, a heavy blade that lacks lightness and speed. Sowoon flows forward and unleashes the first basic form of the Lesser Heaven Sword technique. Mohyun scoffs at the boy darting in close, sneering that he moves like a little rat. The air swings his massive blade in a brutal arc, certain one blow will end the upstart. But Sowoon's lighter sword slips inside the guard, faster than the heavy weapon can answer. Steel cracks against steel in a burst of frost and sparks as the 2 blades finally collide. Chinwal strokes his beard, musing that just like the rumors say the Taeyi sect truly lacks talent. Mohyun grins through the clash, taunting Sowoon by asking if that is really all he has got. Sowoon's eyes flash with cold fire as he answers, refusing to break under the air's contempt. Blades whirl and grind together while the watching masters lean forward, sensing something is wrong. Sowoon plants his blade against the ground and tells Mohyun to shut his mouth. He surges in again, the Lesser Heaven Sword carving a shimmering line through the cold air. He drives the air back step by step, the spoiled prodigy suddenly unable to keep up. Mohyun's eyes go wide with disbelief, realizing the boy before him is absurdly strong. He bares his teeth in panic, demanding to know how a man just like him could possibly be losing. Sowoon answers that this man insulted the Iron Sword sect and had a sparring match with his father. He says he cannot admit to a wrong he did not commit, his words cutting deeper than the blade. A red-hot blade flashes in his memory, the cruel price his father paid for refusing to grovel. He remembers his father's chest and abdomen, scarred and torn by the searing iron. Those wounds were branded into his flesh as a punishment for defying the proud sect. The memory burns behind Sowoon's eyes, fueling a vengeance that 2 lifetimes could not cool. Mohyun stumbles backward, gaping in shock at the boy who refuses to bow or break. Jin Sowoon watches his son fight in his place, pride and terror warring across his battered face. Hyun roars that the boy dared to look away during a sparring match and lunges in a rage. His heavy blade tears through the air toward Sowoon, the crowd gasping at the savage swing. Hyun screams Sowoon's name, her heart in her throat as the strike comes down. Jin Sowoon cries out for his son, helpless on his knees as the duel reaches its breaking point. But Sowoon flows beneath the blow, twisting low as the air's wild blade meets only empty air. Hyun laughs that he meant the boy's lack of brains, still believing his strength must win. A watching master nods, agreeing that as expected the Taeyi sect is utterly pathetic. Chenwal and Juge So-myung exchange a glance, certain the humiliation is going exactly as planned. Sowoon lowers his blade and asks quietly whether that is truly what everyone thinks of his sect. A dark grin spreads across his face as he prepares to shatter every assumption in the courtyard. He bursts into motion, the lesser heaven sword technique unfolding faster than the eye can follow. Hyun's face fills the frame, blood trickling, as he gasps a single bewildered word. The heir's eyes go white with terror, finally grasping that he is hopelessly outmatched. Sowoon dances across the ground in a blur, his blade tracing rings of light around his prey. Hyun screams in panic, demanding to know what is happening and how the boy moves like this. Sowoon flickers through the air like a phantom, the blue dragon bracelet's power surging within him. The air flails and roars, demanding to know what kind of trick the upstart used against him. Sowoon's eyes lock onto him, cold and merciless, as he closes the distance one final time. He completes the first basic form of the lesser heaven sword, every strike landing where it must. Hyun's face splits with shallow cuts, the proud blood wolf carved and bleeding before the crowd. He recoils in horror, the spoiled heir who never knew defeat now ragged and trembling. Sowoon levels his blade as the air collapses, the duel decided beyond any doubt. He stands tall amid the silence, asking if this is really all the mighty Iron Sword sect amounts to. The lesser heaven sword sang in Jin Sowoon's hand, the first basic form unfolding like a memory carved into his bones. Seong Hyun staggered, blood streaking his face, the arrogance of the blood wolf already cracking apart. Jin's eyes burned cold and certain, every strike placed with the patience of a man who had died once already. Blades crossed in a screaming arc, and Hyun felt his guard ripped open as if it were paper. Insignificant, Jin thought, watching the heir's wild eye dart in disbelief at what was happening to him. "How dare you use such cheap tricks?" Hyun roared, unable to admit that raw skill alone was breaking him. The mountain-shattering sword technique came down, and the heir's defense burst into ruin and dust. Hyun reeled blind, choking out that he could not see anything through the storm of dust. "Is he trying to kill me?" The heir screamed, terror swallowing the pride he had carried into the ring. Jin moved through the haze like a shadow, his blade always one breath ahead of his enemy. "Lowly bug," Hyun snarled, lashing out in fury at a junior he believed beneath him. But the fury found nothing, and his strike scattered uselessly against Jin's flawless footwork. Steel rang against steel, as Jin turned every reckless swing back upon its desperate owner. The two clashed at the center, and the heir's strength bled away against a discipline he could not match. On the platform, the white-haired master narrowed his eyes, murmuring that the Taeyi sect's swordsmanship was sharper than he had thought. Combat experience above all, the old sect leader said, reading the truth no one else wished to see. Below, the watching disciples whispered that the boy must be cheating somehow to humble the Iron Sword heir. But Jin's face stayed calm and unreadable, a stillness that frightened them more than any rage could. "Even if I simply win this sparring match," Jin thought, gazing up at the thrones above the stairs. His blade kissed Mo-hyun's body again, drawing a thin line of red across the heir's pride. Mo-hyun's face twisted, sweat and blood mixing, as his world tilted toward an impossible defeat. Jin drifted across the courtyard, weightless, choosing the exact moment to strike like a man with all the time in the world. Then he closed the distance again, his green robe whipping as he pressed the broken air without mercy. Mo-hyun's eyes stretched wide, the bruise on his cheek a brand of every blow he had failed to stop. Jin's sword swept down once more, hammering the air toward the ground he was destined to taste. A single brutal cut tore through the air, with a sound like the sky being split open. The lesser heaven sword flashed in a clean curve, and the duel turned in one final heartbeat. Mo-hyun was thrown back, his body crumpling against the stone of the sect's own grounds. The Iron Sword elders gaped in horror, their faces pale at the ruin of their golden heir. Mo-hyun's mouth fell open in a silent scream, the blood wolf reduced to a beaten boy. His head dropped, hair hanging over a face that no longer held any of its old certainty. His sword slipped from numb fingers and clattered across the ground, abandoning its master. Jin stood tall over the fallen heir, his stance unbroken while the courtyard held its breath. Mo-hyun stared up, teeth bared, unable to comprehend how a junior had shattered him so completely. "My sword," he gasped, eyes hollow as he realized the weapon of his pride had been dropped. Damn it, his fist trembled on the stone, the blood wolf iron sword losing to a guy like that. He scrambled to recover, but Jin was already there, controlling every inch of the ground between them. Another strike drove the air down, dust and blood rising where his body met the earth. Mo-hyun's face contorted, blood trailing from his mouth, his reaching hand finding only failure. Above, the old master watched in cold silence, the verdict of the match already written in his eyes. Jin's boot pressed into the stone as he strode forward, every movement a quiet declaration of dominance. The air was hurled back once more, helpless before a swordsman he could neither read nor touch. Mo-hyun lay sprawled and gasping, the grass against his cheek, a humiliation he would never forget. He forced himself upright, two figures looming through his blurred and furious vision. His wild eye fixed on Jin, searching for some excuse to explain his impossible disgrace. Strange, he thought. My internal energy keeps getting cut off, so I cannot even perform my techniques properly. His battered hands shook, the strength he had always relied upon slipping through his fingers. This is ridiculous, he raged, refusing to believe the iron sword could be outmatched by skill alone. He raised his blade once more, leveling it at Jin with the last of his wounded fury. Jin met him calmly, his sword drawn back, ready to answer the heir's defiance without a wasted motion. Mo-hyun's crimson hair flared as a realization crept coldly through his pain and his hatred. Wait, could it be, he breathed, a poisonous idea taking shape to save what remained of his name. Jin pressed forward again, his blade carving through the air toward the desperate heir. Mo-hyun screamed his accusation, branding the cut-off of his energy as forbidden Murim alliance sorcery. He cried that it was a trick, a banned art used shamelessly during an honorable sparring match. Then a single word cracked across the courtyard, and even the wind seemed to fall still. "Enough," said the white-haired sect leader, his ancient eyes hard with shame and warning. "I felt it clearly," Mo-hyun insisted from the ground, clinging to his lie with bared and bloody teeth. Jin only watched him, unmoved, the falsehood breaking apart against his cold and silent certainty. "Forbidden art," Mo-hyun shrieked, the words spilling out wild and reckless before the whole gathering. The disciples murmured of the heaven-devouring art, a banned technique said to swallow an opponent's kai. In the wide courtyard the air knelt small and broken, the distance between the sects laid bare. "Those are words that should never be thrown around lightly," the old master said, his voice heavy as iron. Mo-hyun's face filled with dread, finally sensing the trap his own lie had set for him. "Truly it is pathetic," the sect leader murmured, ashamed of the grandson he had once exalted. The air crumpled at the old man's feet, his legend dissolving into the dust beneath them. Jin spoke plainly, recounting how he had apologized and tried to back down before the duel. It was Mo-hyun who demanded the match, refusing to let the supposed insult to his sect go unanswered. "Even so," Jin said quietly, "I accepted the sparring match when there was no other path left." His fist tightened with purpose, his only aim to win and prove the Taeyi sect through sheer skill. Hong Seok-yeon watched from the crowd, anger flashing in her eyes at such petty and shameless conduct. Before the gathered 108 peaks, Jin stood bruised but unbent, the truth resting calmly on his side. The old master's worn hand lingered, deciding it would not be bad to observe a little longer. Elders muttered that falsely accusing another sect of sorcery had gone far too dangerous a road. Mo-hyun ground his teeth, the Iron Sword sect's reputation collapsing with his every wild word. "Grandfather," the heir cried out, scraping himself up to name himself the Blood Wolf Iron Sword. "How could I possibly lose," he pleaded, "unless it was sorcery to a mere disciple of the Taeyi sect?" And to confirm it, he insisted, I continued the sparring match, swearing every word of it was the truth. "Accept the punishment for my sins," he howled, his face a mask of madness and ruin. The old sect leader let out a long, weary breath, the sound of a man watching his house fall. He descended toward Jin, white hair flowing, the weight of judgment in every measured step. "Suspicion of sorcery has been raised," he said, "so I cannot let it go and must inspect your body." "Do you want to frame a small sect?" he asked the heir, "just because you could not enter the 108 peaks?" "Shut up," the old master thundered, dragging the lie into the open and shaming his own blood. "Contact the Murim Alliance," he commanded, vowing to hold the entire Taeyi sect accountable if guilty. "Father," came a desperate cry from the crowd, as Jin Sowoon and the others felt the danger close in. "More than my life," the old master said, "his grandson will lay down his life right here, please." Tears slid down the old leader's weathered face, his pride and his lineage crumbling together. "If I am crippled or die here," Jin warned, "let no one touch my body until the alliance arrives." He turned then, decision made, his robe snapping like a banner raised over the broken ground. "For the sake of my honor, ruined by the Iron Sword sex schemes," Jin said, "I am prepared to die." Wreathed in pale fire, he faced the white-haired master and formally challenged the Iron Sword sect leader to a sparring match. For the sake of his honor and his sect's honor, ground into the dirt by the Iron Sword sex schemes, the old man steeled himself. Wreathed in cold blue light, Jin Sowoon stood before the gathered masters, his blade humming with quiet menace. The watching disciples stiffened, hardly believing a mere boy would dare speak so openly to their elders. The old Iron Sword sect leader bared his teeth in fury, snarling that this little brat had crossed a fatal line. With a roar, the white-haired master lunged, his robes billowing as raw kai tore the stone beneath his feet. He drove forward like a storm, the air around him splitting with the force of his charge. Steel flashed and bodies twisted in a blur, the first exchange ending before the crowd could even gasp. A young disciple cried out for the hall leader, terror flooding his face at what he had just seen. The leader screamed that he would cut down the Taeyi sect's lifeline here and now, holding nothing back. Sowoon stood unmoved against the onslaught, his calm a quiet insult to the raging old man. Around the courtyard, the assembled warriors stared in open shock at the boy's audacity. The sect leader's lined face twisted, white hair whipping as he poured everything into the duel. Blades clashed and the two figures crossed the broken ground, neither willing to yield a single step. Watching from the side, the chief strategist of the Murim alliance stroked his beard and observed coldly. From a high balcony, an aide murmured the strategist's title, sensing the storm gathering below. The leader demanded that if the boy had honor, he too should sheath his sword and face him fairly. Lifting his head, the youth answered plainly that he was Jin Sowoon of the Taeyi sect. His eyes burned with old grief and resolve, as he declared he could not sheath his sword. An elder bellowed in outrage that the boy dared act so arrogant before the alliance's chief strategist. The white-haired strategist narrowed a single piercing eye, weighing the dangerous child before him. He accused Sowoon of threatening him, of framing him with whispers of forbidden sorcery. The boy fired back, asking how anyone could ever trust a chief strategist as crooked as him. He stood his ground without flinching, every line of his body daring the elders to strike. Sowoon admitted he had grown too amused and missed his chance to step away in time. He gripped his blade tighter, the weight of 2 lifetimes pressing down on his shoulders. The strategist leaned close and asked what it was the boy truly wanted from all of this. The old man's weathered face stayed unreadable, a sword resting easy in his aged grip. Then the Iron Sword sect leader himself stepped forward, his ancient eyes locking onto the youth. He called it a bold move, his voice low and dangerous as a drawn blade. Sowoon turned to meet him, knowing this was the man he had truly come to topple. The sect leader's mouth curled, muttering how amusing the whole reckless spectacle had become. He asked the boy how certain he was, whether he would wager his sect's very signboard on it. Rooting out forbidden arts, he sneered, was simply the natural duty of any Murim alliance member. The leader vowed that he would shoulder the consequences with his own blade if proven wrong. Very well, the old master said at last, accepting the wager with a cruel and certain smile. Sowoon weighed the offer in silence, asking how betting a divine weapon would even sound to the crowd. On the wall hung the ninefold sword, the divine heirloom passed down through every sect leader before him. The leader sneered that surely a boy of such confidence would gladly stake that priceless blade. He declared that if the boy lost, they would examine his dantian and end this matter at once. An elder accused him of being the Taeyi pawn, propped up to lean on the alliance's name. They twisted his refusal into proof, claiming he meant to commit some despicable and cowardly act. The white-haired leader watched calmly, certain the trap had already closed around the boy. "So you say," the old man murmured, content to let the youth dig his own grave. Then Sowoon answered, "Good," his back to the blinding sun as he accepted every condition. The leader asked whether the boy was truly satisfied to bind himself to these terms. Sowoon loosened his stance, letting his sword drift down as a hush fell over the courtyard. "Examine my body, then," the leader said, ordering the boy not to resist the probing of his kai. Glowing blue energy gathered along the old master's outstretched fingers as he reached out. His kai struck and burrowed inward, searching every meridian for the taint of forbidden sorcery. Deep within, the leader saw the boy's dantian churning like a violent and impossible storm. Sowoon kept his face cold, waiting for the old man to grasp exactly what he had walked into. The aged hand clenched as the search yielded nothing, only confusion and dawning dread. The Iron Sword sect leader's eyes went wide, his certainty cracking apart at last. Watching disciples held their breath, sensing the duel had turned somewhere they could not follow. He found no trace of any dark art, the boy's body clean of the sorcery he had sworn to expose. He didn't learn sorcery, the old master realized in horror, his whole accusation collapsing. Across the yard, a red-haired warrior begged them to believe his desperate and failing protest. An elder gasped that he could not accept it until he confirmed the truth with his own eyes. The leader recoiled, screaming to know just what kind of monster this boy truly was. Then white lightning erupted from Sowoon's palm, the divine technique blazing to brilliant life. The crackling light engulfed them both as the old leader cried out in stunned terror. The lightning slammed home, tearing through the master's guard as blood sprayed into the air. From the crowd, the pink-haired Hong Sa-yeon screamed that her senior brother would surely kill him. The divine palm hammered down, smoke and ruin trailing in the wake of its terrible power. The shattered sect leader collapsed, his disciples frozen as their master crumpled to the stone. Through bloodied lips, the old man rasped, demanding to know what the boy had just done to him. Damn it, he seethed. There had been no trace of the heaven-devouring art, so how was this possible? His trembling hand pressed against the ground, blood pooling dark between his fingers. For this despicable act, Sowoon said coldly, the price would now come due in full. The Iron Sword sect leader lay broken and bleeding on the cold flagstones, his pride in ruins. Apologize, the boy commanded, his voice carrying over the silenced and horrified crowd. Blood streaked the old master's face as he stared up, disbelief and pain warring in his eyes. Pay the proper price, Sowoon told him, standing tall above the fallen Murim elder. From across the yard, a voice cried out his name, Sowoon, as the duel's outcome sank in. Hong Sa-yeon rushed forward, calling out for her senior brother Jin with frantic relief. Keep your promise, the boy warned the broken old man, leaving no room to escape the wager. Above the ancient sect halls, the sky stayed cold and bright, indifferent to the upheaval below. Sowoon's pale eyes burned with quiet triumph, a vengeance 2 lifetimes in the making. He braced himself against the ground, drained yet unbowed, having seized his victory at last. In that case, he said, an aged hand reaching for the surrendered blade between them. The white-haired master knelt in defeat, the ninefold sword and his pride now lost to the boy he scorned. In the dark of the Iron Sword sect's dungeon, rats scurry past the bars as a prisoner thrashes against his chains. Seong Mo-hyun screams into the gloom, insisting the boy who beat him had secretly mastered the forbidden heaven-devouring art. Clinging to the iron bars, the red-haired heir begs his grandfather to believe Jin used that cursed technique against him. He pleads to be heard, raving that he was meant to inherit the whole sect, not be cast down like a fool. The white-haired old master turns away cold, forbidding him a single drop of water until he reflects on his actions. Left alone in the cell, Mo-hyun's fury collapses into a desperate, broken cry for the grandfather who abandoned him. Far above the dungeon, the elegant halls of the estate stand quiet, the cruel little play finally drawing to its end. Inside a sunlit study, the old master sits at his desk while the boy who toppled the sect waits across from him. Jin watches the elder with a faint smirk, sensing this man is far more than a simple retired swordsman. He warns himself inwardly that with this one, he cannot get away with a half-hearted act. The old man lowers his book, and Jin's memory names him at last, a genius among geniuses, the Alliance's chief strategist. If the martial world had Yang Sowa, the scholarly world had Juge Samyang, a mind whose death once doomed countless lives. Juge fixes him with a knowing stare and asks whether the boy truly knew everything from the very start. He lays it bare that Jin provoked the sect leader on purpose and used him to dodge a real sparring match. Even the blood Jin coughed up so pitifully, the strategist reveals, came from the boy biting the flesh inside his own mouth. Setting his brush to ink, Zhuge leans forward and demands the boy finally tell him the whole truth. The strategist marvels that Jin even earned their trust while clearing his name through the entire ordeal. Beyond the latticed window, the wind stirs the courtyard, the silence thick between two cunning minds. Jin lifts his gaze, calm and unbothered, refusing to flinch under the old man's piercing scrutiny. Zhuge rises from his seat, his long white hair sweeping as he studies the boy with sharpened interest. A bare foot steps softly across the wooden floor as the old master closes the distance between them. Jin's eyes drift to a strange token resting nearby, his mind already turning over what it might mean. He grins and points, openly delighted to have finally met the legendary strategist face to face. Zhuge's eyes go wide, stroking his beard in stunned disbelief at the boy's nerve and insight. He eyes the relic on the desk, muttering aloud how much coin it might fetch if he chose to sell it. The old man admits, half to himself, that none of this had unfolded the way he first planned long ago. Jin confesses the truth, that he remembers everything from before his regression, every move and every face. Zhuge's single eye narrows behind his sweeping hair, weighing the impossible boy before him. He presses harder, baffled how Jin made Seong Mo-hyun blurt out the forbidden arts during their match. The strategist warns that answering anything more than this simply would not be worth his while. He scoffs that few would wait days on end, 10,000 gold in hand, just to hold a conversation with him. "So you are saying," he challenges, "that you have nothing at all to gain from meeting me?" Jin bows lightly, declaring that if there are no further questions, he will simply be taking his leave. He shoulders his blade and turns for the door, leaving the old strategist seated and visibly intrigued. Zhuge stops him, demanding to know how the boy expected Mo-hyun to mention forbidden arts at all. A sly smile spreads across Jin's face, the answer already long settled in his perfect memory. He explains that Mo-hyun, cornered and proud, was always destined to reach for that cursed crutch. In his mind's eye, Jin sees the desperate air lashing out with the dark, devouring power that doomed him. Pleased, Zhuge slides a black case across the table, telling the boy to take a look inside first. The lid opens to reveal 3 gleaming spheres, the Iron Sword Sect's own spiritual elixir, the Iron Heart pills. Jin laughs in open joy, thanking the old man for handing him 3 of these precious, priceless pills. Yet the strategist still presses, asking why the boy never revealed all of this to the sect any earlier. Jin answers that he wanted to ensure the Iron Sword Sect could never again oppress the Taeyi sect. What if you had ended up falsely accused of a forbidden art until the very end? Zhuge counters. Then Jin replies coolly, the Taeyi sect could still have cleared its name and protected its honor. The old master steps closer, his presence looming, testing whether the boy's resolve is mere talk. In the courtyard beneath a gnarled tree, Zhuge invites the boy to prove those words with his hands. An aged fist clenches, knuckles cracking, the legendary strategist far from finished as a fighter. Jin's eyes sharpen to steel, every nerve drawn taut as the spar between them ignites. The two clash and break apart across the hall, robes snapping, neither giving the other an inch. Among the scattered scrolls lies a name that carries tradition and honor, the legacy of the Zhuge family. The exchange leaves Jin braced and breathing hard, the old man's strength far greater than any retired elder's. Zhuge's weathered face breaks into a wide grin, thoroughly entertained by the boy who refuses to yield. A burst of laughter erupts from the strategist, all his suspicion melting into genuine delight. Roaring with mirth, the old man declares it would be far more amusing to take this clever boy's side. Jin wipes the sweat from his brow, bewildered at whatever this cackling old man is even talking about. Since you have entertained me, Zhuge announces, "I will give you another gift as a 2-for-1 special." He flicks a small object through the air, and Jin scrambles to catch it in startled hands. The boy's eye goes huge as he realizes exactly what kind of treasure has just landed in his grasp. It is no ordinary item, but a pass that lets a single disciple enter the Murim Academy unconditionally. Jin stares down at the black tablet in his palm, barely able to believe it is a coveted admission token. His fingers tighten around the engraved pass as the weight of what it means begins to sink in. A bespectacled official tells him that after graduating the academy, he should come work at the Mantong Bureau. Clutching the token to his chest, Jin can only stammer a stunned pardon at the unexpected offer. His eye narrows in cautious wonder, sweat beading as he weighs what game this man is really playing. The official cheerfully points him toward the door, the strange bargain left hanging in the air. Outside, the old strategist throws back his head, laughing long and free beneath the open sky. Jin shouts back over his shoulder, flustered and protesting against the whole absurd arrangement. Zhuge's laughter echoes after him, the old genius thoroughly pleased with the boy he has chosen to back. With the token won, Jin senses the Mantong Bureau and the wider world are about to grow very lively indeed. He walks out through the great gates of the Iron Sword sect, his trials within finally behind him. Beneath drifting wisteria petals, a startled figure waits for him along the quiet courtyard path. A flustered exchange erupts, the girl's face flushing red as she struggles to find her words. Under the blooming wisteria tree, Jin comes face to face with the red-haired heiress Seong Morin. Wringing her hands, she stammers an awkward beginning, trying and failing to explain herself to him. Cheeks burning, Morin lowers her gaze, her usual genius composure crumbling before the boy who beat her family. Wisteria blossoms fall slowly around them, the air heavy with everything left unsaid between the two. Her eye trembles wide as she finally mentions it, that moment during the sparring match she cannot forget. Jin stands quietly beneath the cascading flowers, waiting to hear what the heiress has come so far to say. Beneath the wisteria tree, the two face each other at last, the chapter closing on this fateful, fragile meeting. Beneath the falling wisteria, Jin Sowoon finally faced Hong Sa-yeon to say the words he once buried in his past life. He searched for them clumsily, the apology catching in his throat like a stone that would not move. She watched him in silence, the wind dragging her crimson hair across a face she could not keep composed. Petals drifted past her as the weight of what he was about to confess settled over the quiet garden. Then Jin bowed his head low before her, lowering the pride a young master was never meant to surrender. "I'm sorry," he said, and her hands trembled as tears welled despite every effort to hold them back. She thought no man in his position could ever forgive what had been done, yet she chose to understand. It was not an apology from the one truly at fault, but she resolved to accept it all the same. "There's no need for us to keep wounding each other," she told him, voice breaking under the wisteria. Jin's eyes widened, the moment cutting deeper than any blade he had ever crossed in 2 lifetimes. A single tear hung in her red eye, reflecting all the years of grief the sect had swallowed in silence. The memory turned grim, an Iron Sword elder demanding the sect take responsibility and change what it was. A white-clad figure lay broken at his feet, the cost of pride spilled across the cold flagstones. The name of the Murim alliance hung in the air like a threat no struggling sect could afford to ignore. Sa-yeon stood firm against the storm of accusations, her shoulders carrying a burden far too heavy for her. 2 figures faced each other beneath the ancient tree, the rift between their sects yawning open. An old man wept for his fallen brother and grandfather, ruined by men who refused to ever apologize. She turned away, the proud daughter of the sect leader bearing shame that was never truly hers to bear. Lady Xiang covered her face, overcome, the cruelty of the world pressing in on the gentle and the weak. Jin scrambled to comfort her, blurting that tears do not suit a warrior even as his own voice shook. Through her sobs, she presented a small lacquered box, a gift offered in the wake of all that ruin. The Iron Sword elder extended it to him, admitting this could never erase what his sect had done. Jin clutched the box, his perfect memory whispering exactly how precious the thing inside truly was. Inside lay the steel protection pill, an elixir reserved only for the sect's most direct bloodline. "Let us meet as friends next time," she said, hope flickering where only enmity had stood before. Jin grinned through the ache, daring to believe a darker future might be rewritten this time around. Days later, the great gate of the Ti sect rose against the sky, weathered yet still standing proud. The junior disciples cried out his name, swarming toward him with a joy the sect had long forgotten. They clung to him, wailing that their senior brother was surely going to die from such recklessness. One slammed into him with a heavy thud, sobbing the single word "brother" into his chest. A gray-haired disciple stomped toward them, scowling at the tearful reunion playing out on the boards. He folded his arms, pretending the warmth in his chest was nothing more than mild irritation. He confessed he had once regretted ever joining the Ti sect, back when its name meant nothing. He believed he would never reach great completion in the weak lesser heaven sword technique he trained. But thanks to Jin, he had grown proud to call himself a disciple of this struggling little sect. He gripped his blade with new resolve, vowing to train the lesser heaven sword until his hands bled. He swore he would become a far greater disciple of the Ti sect, just like senior brother Jin. His fist clenched at his side, the foreknowledge and effort of one man kindling fire in the others. The two walked on together, the bond between them forged in shared hardship and stubborn hope. The pink-haired sect leader laughed that he had not slept a wink after the news from the Iron Sword sect. He summoned the hall leaders before him, the proud master finally ready to make his decree. They had once been humiliated and forced to swallow it, weak because the sect itself was weak. Now a mere child had achieved what even the grown masters of the sect never could. The sect leader felt both grateful and ashamed, the truth of his own failure laid bare before him. "So what?" he barked, declaring that Sowoon had protected the very honor of the Ti sect. He clasped the boy's hand, swearing he would reward him out of his own pocket if he had to. He hauled the protesting accountant close, deaf to every objection about the sect's empty coffers. He flexed for the crowd, beaming as if generosity alone could refill the treasury he had drained. He spun toward the bearded elder, promising a grand feast to celebrate the young master's triumph. The elder bellowed that his hearing had failed him, refusing to acknowledge such ruinous spending. 3 full meals a day, the leader insisted, while the scowling Chiao Yong glared in flat disbelief. Jin smirked from the shadows, watching the man he remembered finally return to his old reckless self. It was decreed the remaining pill would go to whichever disciple achieved the greatest progress ahead. At his abacus, the senior disciple muttered that the sect leader had gone completely out of his mind. Buried in ledgers, the lazy finance keeper lamented every coin squandered on a single iron heart pill. The sect leader roared that he would simply gift the boy 3 guest houses without a second thought. Word had spread of what happened at the Iron Sword sect, and now even outsiders watched the Ti name. The Ti sect had always faced one desperate situation after another, forever scraping just to survive. Yet the senior Chiao Yong only drank and watched from the sidelines, accusing them of selling off the sect's pride. Jin shot back that 3 guest houses in Hefei could earn enough to buy 5 iron heart pills a year. Deep down, the accountant was glad the sect leader had finally acted so firmly, though he would never admit it. The drunken elder slumped over his cups, demanding to know where the boy thought he was sneaking off to. "You little punk, how will you make money?" he sneered as Jin strode toward the gate. "Where do you think you're going, brat?" the elder shouted after his retreating back. Jin only grinned, a blade of grass between his teeth, already setting out to seize the future he remembered. The streets of Hefei stirred beneath a bruised sunset, merchants hawking their wares as ordinary lives carried on. A weary traveler in a wide straw hat pushed through the crowd, his face lined with secrets and quiet grief. Towering before him stood Wanga Manor, the seat of one of the 3 greatest merchant families in all the world. 2 guards traded gossip at the gate, whispering of the Lord's daughter and all the rumors about how beautiful she was. Deep within the estate, a lone figure crossed the silent courtyard, summoned to attend a matter no coin could fix. Heavy wooden doors loomed shut, sealing away a sick room the whole manor feared to enter. A trembling hand reached for the latch, and the cold leaking through the cracks bit like winter teeth. Wang Jiamsak, lord of Wanga Manor, sat in his finery, his eyes hollow from too many sleepless nights. Within the frost-rimmed chamber, untouched food sat cold, while the sound of ragged coughing echoed off the walls. A small attendant doubled over, choking on the freezing air that no fire could ever drive away. At the heart of the room, a girl knelt wrapped in furs, her every breath crawling out as a pale white mist. This was Wang Soso, the Lord's only daughter, lovely as the rumors claimed yet doomed by the cold inside her. She smiled gently and told her father she had spent the day working on some new embroidery. Her fingers brushed the delicate stitches, a fragile comfort in a body that radiated a killing chill. Wang Jiamsak watched her with eyes that ached, knowing every gift he gave only delayed the inevitable. He had filled the entire room with things that emit cold air, desperate to soothe the fever burning her alive. Bowls of ice ringed her bed like offerings, a fortune of frost spent against a curse no physician understood. A doctor bowed low and confessed that no medical art he knew was capable of treating her condition. Sweat beaded on the girl's flushed skin even in that frozen room, her body waging a war it was losing. The verdict fell like a blade, that she would likely not live past the age of 20. Yet Wang Soso laughed through her tears, refusing to let despair steal the warmth from her smile. She told her father she wanted for nothing, the hairpins and ornaments and silks already more than enough. Then softly, she admitted there was one thing she truly longed to see, the marketplace beyond these walls. Sealed away to keep the cold in, she had grown curious about what the outside world might actually look like. She lowered her gaze, ashamed, calling it too unreasonable a thing for her to ever ask of him. Moved beyond words, the Lord ordered a special carriage built for her alone, sparing no expense. It would hold the cold like her room, he promised, so that one day she could finally go outside. Overcome, Wang Soso threw her arms around her father as the freezing air swirled around their embrace. Tears spilling, she thanked him again and again, clinging to the one person who never gave up on her. Wang Jiamsak's weathered face crumpled, his love for his dying child laid utterly bare. But in the hush that followed, a shadow shifted in the rafters, and the gentle scene curdled into something sinister. Night fell over the manor's grand rooftops, the sunset bleeding into a darkness that hid cruel intent. By moonlight, the great hall stood silent, unaware that everything had already gone terribly wrong. Wang Jiamsak stumbled into the empty sick room, ice scattered and his daughter nowhere to be found. His shaking hands seized a ransom note, the brushstrokes screaming that they had taken his daughter. He roared in anguished fury, demanding to know who would dare commit such an unforgivable crime. Guards scrambled at his command to find the kidnappers and drag them before him without delay. He swore a grand reward to whoever saved her, vowing to give whatever it takes to bring her home. Elsewhere, a young man paused before a notice board, the abduction already common rumor in the streets. Jin Sowoon's lips curved into a knowing smirk, for this was a tragedy his perfect memory had seen before. His thoughts crystallized like splitting ice, foreknowledge and recall sharpening into a single deadly purpose. He weighed the merchant family's plight, knowing a debt of gratitude could be worth more than gold. A mere transaction would end the moment the Jiryong merchants got what they wanted, he reasoned coldly. True sponsorship, he understood, was something built on sincere gratitude that could never be bought. To save a daughter given up for dead would bind a wealthy house to him in lasting, willing loyalty. His eyes gleamed with sharp cunning as the entire scheme clicked into ruthless, perfect place. He dropped low and dug through the dirt, gripping the buried evidence his memory had led him straight to. Among the crimes reported around Hefei and Keio Lake in his past life, a few records mentioned a young girl. Most had been mere burglaries or unearthed corpses, but one thread refused to match the others. He raced across the rooftops through the dark, closing on a truth the whole manor had overlooked. Vaulting a fence, Jin Sowoon pressed deeper toward a hidden place buried near a lonely cabin in the wilds. He arrived to find masked captors and a sprawled body, muttering that at least he was not too late. Wang Soso lay bound and feverish on the floor, her cold, cursed body now blazing with unnatural heat. Jin froze in genuine shock, struck by the fact that there was never any record of Wang Soso being sick. A blade swept toward him, the kidnappers determined to bury every witness to their plan. He twisted through the dark, steel flashing as he closed the distance on the masked assassin. The killer staggered with a choked gasp, blood spraying as Jin's strike tore clean through his guard. Cold eyes glared above the mask, the assassin recovering to meet the boy blade for blade. Steel rang against steel in the gloom, two shadows trading killing blows over the helpless girl. Wang Soso stirred amid the chaos, her flushed eyes fluttering open in dazed confusion. When the dust settled, Jin Sowoon stood victorious over the fallen, his cloak still trailing the cold air. He knelt and freed her from the coarse ropes, struck by the heat pouring off her whole body. He gathered the half-conscious girl into his arms as she gasped for breath against the burning fever. Gently he asked if she was awake, his voice steady against the terror still clouding her eyes. He gave his name plainly, calling himself Jin Sowoon of the Taiyi sect, a stranger and yet her savior. He explained he had been on a night stroll nearby, when suspicious noises drew him to the cabin. As a martial artist who upholds the principles of the Jianghu, he claimed, he simply could not ignore it. Recognizing the famous Wang Soso, he vowed her father would reward this rescue handsomely. She reached for him weakly, overwhelmed, as he steadied her trembling, fever-racked frame. Cradling a flicker of cold light in his palm, Jin sensed her acupoints threatening to burn out entirely. He understood at last that this was no simple cold, and his sharp mind raced to name the true cause. For a body to burn from within like hers, the illness had to be something rare beyond any common ailment. At the Murim Alliance in his past life, there had been countless medical texts catalogued in his memory. Somewhere in those archives, he was certain, lay a record of a disease matching these exact symptoms. His memory seized it, the compendium of 10,000 bottles, written by the second coming of Hua Chuo. The text described a constitution that emits boiling fire Kai throughout the entire body. In severe cases, the acupoints could burn up, the agony worsening until only cold air offered any relief. The truth dawned on Jin Sowoon's face, his eyes widening at what her so-called illness really was. It was no disease at all but a rare bodily constitution, meaning there was no such thing as a cure for her. He stared at the dying girl and felt the cold of a death he already remembered. In my past life, there was no such thing as treatment for what was killing her. Of all the times to be dragged into this, it had to be the one fate he could not forget. Wang So vanished from his old memories, and they never even recovered her body. The records said her solar constitution left her dying, so killers mutilated and hid the corpse. But if the solar constitution itself is the true problem, then there may be a way out. Trembling and burning, she gasped that such a method could not possibly work. He knelt closer as her body bled its killing cold into the air around them. "I might know a way to change your constitution," he told her quietly. In the dim room she pressed herself low, desperate, and hollowed out by years of pain. "Please," she whispered, "please just tell me what I have to do. I will do anything, so please, tell me how to live." He warned her bluntly, "What if I turn out to be nothing but a scammer?" "Even this young," she answered, "I can tell those who want to help from those who want to harm." "All right," he said, and the words settled between them like a vow. "Then I will tell you what you need to know before we begin. The lunar maiden mirrors your solar constitution, so reverse the method and it should work. There is something, however, you must be very careful of." She dreamed aloud of holding her family and talking freely with the man she loved. Just like that she breathed, and tears traced down her exhausted face. He gripped her wrist, the cold biting deep, and swore that was exactly all he wished for too. Her constitution had granted immense strength, yet stolen every ordinary joy others took for granted. Then his head snapped up. "They are already here, hidden in the dark outside." She flinched as he raised a hand, fear flooding back into her eyes. "I am sorry," he murmured, and struck her down before she could understand. "It would ruin everything if you, or the Wanga Manor ever learned the truth," he thought. Beyond the walls, masked kidnappers crept toward the silent manor under a dead night sky. Their leader hissed, "Move in quickly and secure the hostage before anything goes wrong." "Use no signature sword move," he ordered. "Our identities must never be exposed. Especially from us, the assassins of the noble Namgung clan." Steel flashed, and a blade halted against the throat of the lead killer. "Me," the boy said, "just someone here to rain on your little parade." "Who sent you?" the masked man demanded. "Reveal your identity at once." "I know exactly who you are. The Namgung clan's Kankyong merchant group," he answered. "How could you possibly know all of that?" the killer breathed, shaken. "No matter what you tried, your merchants could never outmatch the Wanga Manor." Namgung Sangwon truly crossed the line, ordering the kidnapping of another family's precious daughter. The assassins surged, blades whistling toward the lone intruder in the dark. They unleashed it then, the secret Kankyong boundless sword technique. He recognized every motion, the same forbidden art he had only overheard once. Their killing strokes converged, certain that no outsider could ever answer this style. But he met blade with blade, reading their technique as if he had mastered it himself. One masked killer reeled, his perfect form shattered by an impossible counter. "You cowardly bastard," another snarled, encircling him with desperate steel. He spun through them, his borrowed sword carving the night apart. Blood sprayed as he turned their own secret art against their throats. Kankyong boundless sword technique, second form. He named it as he struck. "You even know how to use the second form," the killer screamed in disbelief. "Step forward again," he taunted, "and watch your half-step close before death." "This makes no sense," the wounded man gasped. "Are you mocking me?" How is a nobody from nowhere overpowering the great Namgung clan's sacred technique? He overwhelmed them utterly, their proud sword art crumbling in his hands. It seems you picked up scraps from eavesdropping, the last man rasped, but you had better stay on edge. This is the killing move of the Kankyong technique I am about to unleash, the survivor vowed. In the boy's eye, the entire formula already turned, memorized and waiting. He flowed forward through the storm of steel, calm at the heart of the slaughter. Blood streaked the blade as the broken killer choked out. How did you do this? You do not even know of the sword-breaking formula that shatters your own technique, he said. Ah, I suppose you'd have no choice but to think so, he murmured over the ruin. Now then, he breathed, turning at last from the fallen assassins. He gathered the unconscious girl, the rescued hostage safe in his arms. Awake again, she tugged shyly at his sleeve, saying she had a favor to ask. Cheeks flushed, she whispered the word that would bind their fates. May I call you Oraboni, big brother?